I just released a video recently demonstrating trend validation through benchmarking. And I posted that video and had some really great responses, a couple of them on the Appraisers Forum on Facebook. And so I wanted to answer those questions, or at least respond to those questions. So part of it was, gosh, even zip code, that seems like really huge set when I maybe only have a handful of potential, like, truly comparable properties. Now here, what we want to talk about is two things. Number one, we're looking to establish a trend on how the market is behaving. So forces in supply and demand, and uh, those are going to be impacted in two ways. There's going to be macroeconomic changes and microeconomic changes. And uh, what you will see is that a significant portion of the trends in any market are going to be related to uh, macro level changes. And I've got an interesting visual here that I wanted to show you. And this is, I just grabbed a couple screenshots. The top one is one I just made tracking monthly prices in Dallas County. The bottom one is an image that Ryan Lundquist had posted in his Sacramento appraisers blog, and he always has fantastic visuals if you ever follow him. And so I noticed, and I've noticed this in uh, many occasions. This is just an image that I could find and grab. You will see that the top image and the bottom image, the trends are really similar. And we're talking about Sacramento, California, and Dallas, Texas. Um, there's a lot of difference in those locations. Those markets are going to be quite different in many ways, but you will see that over the time span that we're looking at, you see the same peaks and valleys, and those same peaks and valleys are due to macro level changes. So we're talking about interest rates that are going to be a macro level um, uh, factor in supply and demand. We're talking about consumer confidence, inflation, some of those really big factors. Those are going to have a big impact in our market. And so remember, we're looking at remembering that prices change for a reason. So why is the price changing? It's always going to come down to supply and demand. And tracking supply and demand, that's going to be a different data set than your comps. Your comps are really focusing on the value for that specific property. And here, we're not as concerned with value specifically as we are with the changes in value and the delta between one value and another value. That's the market change. That's a supply and demand issue. And so we can look at that on the again. I'll let you see some info sparks here. So this was the chart that I showed last time, and I want to show you kind of the numbers behind that we also want to consider. So we're also seeing this is a Collin County and a specific zip code within Collin County. You can see that the marketing times are also tracking, and the list sale ratios are also tracking. These are all um, indicators of supply and demand. Month supply is one of my favorites um, because it's mixing both supply and demand together, and it's a really good snapshot. And you can see those are really tracking together. Well, what you're also going to see is changes in the month supply are going to show you where inflection points are in the market. So the the inventory relative to demand, which is what month supply is, uh, really peaked relative to what it had been in August of 2024. And so you can see that that's going to impact what we see in other places. So we're going to see, okay, when our inventory increased relative to demand, that's when we started seeing more negotiation. So our sale list ratios were impacted, and we started seeing people having to take lower offers relative to their asking price. And so uh, we can see that, okay, the marketing times are also going up because there's more competition, more inventory, and sometimes what you see is that it takes time for the market to respond. A really interesting one is if we look back at the very beginning of 2022, we had a shift in the market that took the participants in the market a really long time to let sink in. So at that moment, we had interest rates really rising. We actually had inventory rising pretty sharply during that same time period, and but prices just kept skyrocketing. And it's because there was an economic factor of expectations that were feeding in, and people's perceptions couldn't keep up with the rapid changes in what was actually happening. So sometimes you see an inflection point and you look down the road and think about what is happening, and when I should anticipate seeing a shift. And eventually we did. So in 2022, eventually there was a pretty sharp turnaround in the market because the the perceptions finally shifted, that that huge impact on effective demand from rapidly rising interest rates. It caught up, and the market did change. And that change, that hump in 2022, I've seen that in every graph I have looked at. This is one of those things that even I talked to some appraisers all over the country, just from different things that we've talked about in different classes that I teach, and I've seen the same chart in a lot of different appraisers' work, and that's because that was a micro or a macro economic change. And so then you have to look at, okay, how how big can I go and how small do I need to go? And some of that depends on, are there microeconomic changes that are happening in a small area that's just going to affect your neighborhood? Maybe. I find that to be a little bit more rare than maybe you have a regional change that's going to be different. So in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we've had a very steady net migration, and that has impacted the demand in our market. So the demand for real estate continues to rise in a lot of ways, just because of the influx of new residents to this region. You might have other markets. I know in West Texas, there's the Midland Odessa area, which is it's got its own microeconomic factors related to oil. So the oil prices, oil production has a big impact on that local economy. So in that local economy, if there's some changes, if there's inflection points in employment because of the market for oil, that that's going to create different inflection points that may differ from those macroeconomic levels. So rarely are you going to have a situation where your specific little neighborhood boundaries are going to have um, economic conditions that are going to be really just relevant to that micro market. You might have some of those. Maybe age restricted communities might be an example where you have uh, a specific market that is going to differ from the surrounding areas in some of the elements. So those would be niche markets. Often you don't have to have um, just specific comparable data that you're using to develop market conditions adjustments, because market conditions really is a broader uh, phenomenon. So just wanted to clear that up. The the appraisers who posted those questions, thank you, and keep those questions coming. I like this. I think this is a really good format um, to kind of have a discussion with a large group of people. So thanks for watching.